Good morning, I'm Taylor Wilson, and today is Friday, April 4th, 2025. This is The Excerpt. Today, just how bad did the markets get? Plus, Trump fires officials on the National Security Council, and another active hurricane season is on the way. It was a brutal day for the U.S. stock market yesterday in the wake of President Donald Trump's announced tariffs this week. Still, Trump speaking to reporters before leaving the White House was optimistic.
The markets are going to boom, the stock is going to boom, the country is going to boom, and the rest of the world wants to see, is there any way they can make a deal? They've taken advantage of us for many, many years. For many years, we've been at the wrong side of the ball, and I'll tell you what, I think it's going to be unbelievable.
For more on how exactly the markets reacted and what might be next, I caught up with USA Today money and personal finance reporter Medora Lee. Hello, Medora. Thanks for joining me on what I'd imagine has been a pretty crazy day for you.
Yeah, pretty crazy is right. I don't think we've had this much excitement in the markets in years.
Well, let's get into that. I mean, I know the markets cratered. We expected this, but how bad did things get?
Pretty bad. I mean, we already started sharply lower, so that was bad. But then we extended those losses. The blue chip Dow lost nearly 1,700 points in one day. The S&P 500 tumbled about 275 points. All three major stock indexes were sharply lower on the day. And here's some good stats for you. The Dow's posted its largest one-day loss in September 2022. The S&P 500 had its worst day since June 2020. And the NASDAQ had its biggest single-day loss since March 2020, which was the start of the pandemic. So that is where we are.
My goodness. All right. Well, good job putting it in context there. And I assume it's fair to say, Medora, this was a direct response to Trump's announced tariffs from the day before. Is that correct?
When he came out and actually announced them, the sweeping 10% across all countries didn't sound so bad because there was talk that we were going to see 20, 25%. But then he started talking about specific countries. I think there were about 60 of them that he said were going to get slapped with even higher tariffs. And I think that was more aggressive than what people had expected. And that was what started off the huge sell-off. Especially, I think a lot of the Asian countries were heavily targeted. And as you know, when you go shopping at Target or Walmart or Dollar Tree, Gap, almost everything comes from Vietnam, China. And so I think that those retailers got hit pretty hard.
All right. Interesting. Meanwhile, the benchmark 10-year Treasury yield sank to its lowest level since October. What does this really mean more broadly?
When there's a lot of uncertainty, times of uncertainty, people kind of try to flock to safe assets, and treasuries are considered safe. So the yield drops when the prices go up with treasuries. So people were buying them like crazy. They were just kind of nervous about everything, and they know that treasuries will always pay something and they won't lose value. The other one that people flock to is gold. But gold's been on a tear for a while. So it hit another record high and then it fell back a bit. But people are just feeling very nervous.
Let's talk about crypto for a second. I think sometimes folks think of this as kind of an escape route when the market is struggling in this way. But was it immune to any of this kind of chaos yesterday?
Bitcoin actually held up a little bit better than stocks, but it ultimately did succumb and turned lower by the end of the trading day because it is still affected by the tariffs, because a lot of the Bitcoin mining in the US relies on equipment that comes from Asia. So when the equipment from Asia's got a huge tax on it, people are going to feel that as well.
Medora, is there any sense on what's next from the Federal Reserve and how they might factor into this?
Without a doubt, I'm sure the Fed is watching this closely because a lot of economists have said that the tariffs will raise prices. And the Fed's been trying to fight high inflation for a couple of years now. And that last stretch, we've never even gotten actually back to its goal of 2% yet. And here we are now. And if tariffs go into effect, and they're in effect for a long time, inflation might kick up again. So they're probably a little bit nervous about that. And on the other side, they're also in a bad position because the economy has been slowing down. So now we have a scenario where we might see high inflation and a slowing economy. So what does the Fed do? Does it fight inflation with higher rates, maybe possibly down the line, or keeping rates higher? Or are they going to cut rates to help the job market? if the economy is slowing down. So they're kind of in the middle here. I think that a lot of people say the Fed is going to wait and see how this pans out. A lot of portfolio managers have said the same. They said, even though the market's falling apart, they say, we actually still are in a period of uncertainty. So April 2nd brought some clarity, but it's still very uncertain because we don't know what other countries are going to do. Are they going to retaliate? And if so, by how much? How long these tariffs will be put in place? And are there negotiations where, tariffs will come down? So nobody really knows yet. And I think they're all going to kind of wait and see what happens. In the meantime, we also have economic data. On Friday morning, we are going to get the March jobs report. Everybody kind of thinks that the job market is slowing down. So we'll see what happens.
All right. Medora Lee covers money and personal finance for USA Today. Thank you, Medora.
Thank you.
The Department of Education is warning states that public schools offering impermissible DEI programs could be at risk of losing federal funding. The agency gave state education commissioners nationwide 10 days to certify they've followed civil rights laws and court rulings. If they don't verify their compliance, Trump administration officials reminded them the federal government can revoke their funds, impose substantial liabilities, or launch Justice Department investigations. The memo does not clarify what the administration views as a DEI program, but it says illegal DEI practices advantage one race over another. The use of certain DEI practices amounts to a violation of federal law, it says. You can read more with a link in today's show notes. The Trump administration ousted the director of the National Security Agency last night. General Timothy Hawk, who was chief of U.S. Cyber Command in addition to leading the NSA, was one of the few holdovers from the Biden administration at a time when President Trump has moved quickly to replace his intelligence agency leadership with hires he believes will be loyal to him. Last night's move was first reported by the Washington Post. The NSA is a vast and high-tech spying agency that specializes in gathering signals intelligence, more commonly known as electronic eavesdropping, around the world, in space, and more recently in cyberspace. Several top congressional Democrats blasted the move as making the U.S. less safe from cyber intelligence espionage activities. The White House and the NSA did not return requests from USA Today seeking comment. President Donald Trump has fired senior officials on the National Security Council. I spoke with USA Today White House correspondent Francesca Chambers to learn more. Hello again, Francesca.
Thanks, Taylor.
Thanks for hopping on. So several White House national security officials have been fired. What positions are we talking about here, Francesca?
Well, Taylor, we don't know exactly how many aides that President Donald Trump ended up firing. He declined to say so on Air Force One when he talked to reporters on Thursday evening, although he did confirm that several people on the National Security Council had been fired. Now, that is the council that advises him on national security matters. And we know that some of them worked on intelligence matters as well as technology matters.
As for why they were let go, what do we know as of now, Francesca, and how does far-right activist Laura Loomer enter this conversation?
While speaking to reporters on Air Force One, the president said, "We're always going to let go of people that we don't like, or people we don't think can do the job, or people that may have loyalties to somebody else." Trump said, "You'll always have that." So it's notable that several of the fired officials had worked for Secretary of State Marco Rubio when he was a U.S. Senator. And one of those fired officials worked for Michael Waltz, who is his current national security advisor. And you may recall came under fire last week for Signalgate, that group chat that White House and cabinet level officials had been a part of about those Houthi strikes in Yemen that a journalist was accidentally added to. Now, when it comes to Laura Loomer, she had visited the White House on Wednesday, and she indicated on her social media that she presented the president with research on administration officials who she said weren't properly vetted and may not have been sufficiently behind the president's agenda. But the president said on Air Force One that she made job recommendations while she was at the White House, although she certainly makes recommendations for removals as well.
Interesting. So how is the National Security Council itself responding in the wake of all this?
The National Security Council declined to comment on the firings, saying that we do not comment on personnel matters, Taylor.
You mentioned Signalgate. These firings this week come after that Signal chat leak last week. What's the latest there, Francesca? And I guess how curious is it that we're now seeing other firings after Trump declined to fire his national security advisor, Mike Waltz, last week?
It wasn't immediately clear why the officials were fired, other than the reasons that Donald Trump gave himself to reporters when they were on the plane. But Taylor, it does notably come after that group text message scandal last week at the White House, in which I noted that his current national security advisor was involved. But that also involved the defense secretary, the director of national intelligence, as well as other cabinet level officials who still have their jobs.
All right. Francesca Chambers covers the White House for USA Today. Thank you, Francesca.
Thanks, Taylor.
Meanwhile, the Pentagon Inspector General announced yesterday that it has launched an investigation into the Signal chat leak. You can read more about that with a link in today's show notes. Get ready for another active Atlantic hurricane season. As many as 17 storms are expected, according to experts from Colorado State University in their initial forecast released yesterday. Of those 17, researchers forecast that 9 will become hurricanes. A typical year averages about 14 tropical storms, with 7 of them spinning into hurricanes. Last year, 18 storms formed, including devastating hurricanes Helene and Milton. The expected busy season is due to the presence of unusually warm water in the Atlantic, where hurricanes form, along with the predicted absence of an El Niño effect, which can hinder hurricane formation. Thanks for listening to The Excerpt. We're produced by Shannon Ray Green and Kelly Monahan, and our executive producer is Laura Beatty. You can get the podcast wherever you get your audio, and if you're on a smart speaker, just ask for The Excerpt. I'm Taylor Wilson, and I'll be back tomorrow with more of The Excerpt from USA Today.